a review of yesterday. Yesterday, we began the world of biology by discussing what separates the living from a non-living world. Oh, whoa, sorry. These are not your notes. Those were a little more detailed. Yours should have looked a little bit more like that. Okay. This is important to really know this list. It is. Because you got to understand what are those things all living things have. So you understand what makes up a living organism. All right. Then we said, I don't know if we said it in here, we said, we mentioned viruses. I might have mentioned it real briefly, saying viruses are kind of the exception to the rule. Well, not the exception. You have your living world and you have your non-living world, and there's like this little gray area in between the world of viruses. Now, I don't want to say gray area because it's pretty much been established they're considered to be non-living. That's what we're going to talk about today. Today's discussion is just going to be about viruses. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about viruses. Then what we'll do is I'm going to show you a little movie clip about viruses. I think I'm going to rewrite these notes, actually. And then let you guys get into groups. So let me try to find these notes again. Viruses are actually kind of cool. Well, when they're not, out being deadly. By the way, you guys catch a virus all the time. It's actually pretty common for living organisms to catch viruses. Viruses are everywhere. The common cold is, which is a type of a virus called an adenovirus. Okay? Now, that particular virus is different from other type of viruses like HIV. HIV is a virus as well. Ebola virus, another virus. There's lots of viruses out there. H1N1, you guys have heard about. That's a virus. Now, some of them they're not all created equal. Some of them are more deadly than others. And it kind of has to do with the way they replicate inside you. And it has to do with the type of cell they attack. HIV is so devastating because of the type of cell it attacks. It attacks white blood cells. That's what makes it so bad. You need your white blood cells. You guys know what white blood cells do, right? They normally keep you healthy. They're your defense mechanism in your body. So if you have this virus going around taking out your white blood cells, you're going to be in trouble. Before we get to HIV and all that, let's talk some generalities. Let's talk about a virus. A virus is non-living. I can't stress that enough. It's a non-living strand of genetic material. So that's the funny thing about a virus. It actually contains DNA or RNA, which is strange. You have these things that contain DNA and RNA, and they're still not considered living. Plus a protein coat. Okay. So the only thing that a virus is, I'll kind of make it easy. A virus consists of DNA or RNA and a protein coat, almost like a protein coat, like literally it's kind of wrapped around in a protein. That's it. They don't have any of those fancy organelles. They don't even have a plasma membrane. They don't have any of that stuff. So that's where it kind of becomes a little, they have some crazy shapes. Sometimes they look like that. Sometimes they look like that. Okay? This black part that I wrote, that's basically the protein. The outer part of it is the protein coat. The inside is where you will find the DNA or the RNA. So some viruses have DNA, and I'll represent that by blue. Some viruses have RNA, and I'll represent that by red. HIV is actually a particular virus that has RNA as its genetic material, not DNA. I realize we have not discussed DNA and RNA yet in any detail in this class, so I understand that you don't know really the difference between the two. But let me see if you can figure it out from just the picture I draw here. Yeah, my pictures are bad, but we'll see if you can figure it out anyway. DNA and RNA are actually very similar structurally. They kind of look the same, believe it or not. But DNA is like a ladder. Actually, it's like a zipper. You know what? This is better. DNA would be like a zipper. You have kind of these sides and they're connected, or like a ladder. RNA, to get RNA, you would basically just kind of rip or unzip, if I can unzip, and RNA would just be like one half of it. So structurally, they're very similar. Kind of neat. So I tried to draw that in a picture. You have DNA, which I tried to make like a ladder twisting around, and then you have RNA, which is literally one side of a ladder. Not very effective as a ladder, I guess. Okay. Here's the deal. Viruses can't reproduce on their own. In other words, if a virus wants to make more of itself, it can't just get together with another virus and make more of itself. It doesn't work that way. It can't even just sit there and say to itself, all right, I want more of myself, and try to do it asexually. It doesn't work. They can't reproduce on their own. They can't make energy. Any living organism has to find a way to obtain and use energy. It's one of those characteristics. Viruses can't do that. They can't make it. They can't use it. They don't have any pieces, parts inside of it to do that. They can't make proteins. Remember, all living organisms are big bags of protein. Okay? They can't make the protein that they have, they can't even make that themselves. So you're like, well, what do? They absolutely need a host cell. I like to think, what I mean by that, they need a host cell. They need to hijack another cell, one that has all those parts, and basically needs to hijack the use of them. That's what viruses do to make more of themselves and to survive. It's kind of neat. I mean, it's not neat, but it's kind of interesting. All right. Moving along. Questions on that? I want to talk about a type of virus called a retrovirus. You might have heard the word retrovirus. The reason I want to talk about this kind of virus is because this is what HIV is. HIV is considered a retrovirus. Okay. Here's what a retrovirus is. I'm going to get a little technical here, but I think it's worth it because HIV is something you hear about in the news. You'll always hear about it in the news. They're going to mention words like retrovirus. They're going to mention some of these other words, and I think it's actually a good idea to understand what they're talking about. Okay, so HIV is a retrovirus, which means that it's actually a virus with RNA. Also, when it reproduces inside of another cell, it reproduces backwards. Okay, so here's what you kind of have to keep in mind. We kind of give a little background. Remember one of the first day of school 2 days ago when I wrote this on the board? I think I wrote this on the board for you guys. And I gave a little spiel and I said, okay, normally all living organisms have DNA. That DNA is going to basically eventually become some protein that it makes. It's the code that makes a certain protein. Okay. Well, HIV, this virus, needs to actually work its way backwards before it can go forward again. There's why. It starts with RNA. You can't just go right from RNA to protein. This virus first needs to turn its RNA into DNA. Then that virus DNA needs to basically inject itself into the host cell DNA to be able to make more of it. In other words, it's kind of has to work backwards. Retro, the word retro actually means backwards. It's kind of like a backwards virus. So whenever you see the word retrovirus and they're talking about HIV, they basically say, okay, here you are starting with this RNA stuff. This RNA actually has to kind of go backwards and make itself into DNA, then go on and make a protein. Kind of interesting. Okay, but here's how it works. I wish I had a picture of this, and I don't. I mean, so you guys have to put up with my drawings here.
They're good.
Thank you. Okay, I just drew a little virus, a little HIV virus. I am going to draw a picture of this thing attacking a cell, hijacking a cell. Okay, viruses are tiny, if you didn't already pick up on that. This particular cell, I'm going to call it a host cell, and it's a very generic term. Host cell just basically means it's going to host this virus, whether it likes it or not. HIV is real picky about the type of cell it wants to hijack. It will only hijack white blood cells. But that's what makes it so bad. Like I said, that's what makes it so bad. You don't want your white blood cells to go anywhere. Okay, so here's what happens. HIV has a little piece of RNA inside of it. It's genetic material. It's going to approach this white blood cell. It's going to basically fool this white blood cell into thinking it belongs there. And it's going to inject that piece of RNA inside of it, along with some other stuff, but that's the important part. But this thing's a retrovirus, so the next step of what it ends up doing is taking that RNA and changing it into DNA. It can do that. It has the ability. Why does it have the ability? Because it's basically hijacking all the pieces, parts of the host cell in order to do it. Too bad for the white blood cell. It has no idea what's going on. It's at this point, it thinks it belongs there. Okay, the next step is this. Now you have this little piece of viral DNA floating around there. The next picture I'm going to draw is of the host cell's DNA. Every cell, more or less, has a piece of DNA. That's one of the characteristics of life. And this one I'm drawing now, it happens to be the host cell DNA. That's the white blood cell's DNA. That's the normal DNA. Well, this little piece of viral DNA is going to literally cut and paste. This is going to be hard to draw, but I'd rather have you understand than draw, guys. I'm going to basically draw that piece of DNA. It's hard to draw. I don't care if you just kind of make it horrible looking. Hopefully you guys kind of understand what I'm doing here, though. You can see it from this picture. That piece of viral DNA in blue just basically cut and pasted itself into the host cell DNA. The host cell DNA is still there, and it's fine and active and working, and everything's great. This DNA is going to go on and make RNA and make protein, and the cell's going to go about its life and be happy. However, now that it has this invader DNA in there, it's also going to be making the proteins that the virus wants it to make too. That's bad. Because some of those proteins that are now going to be made are going to be bad for this white blood cell, and it's going to destroy it. Not only are some of those proteins that this cell is going to make going to be bad to the white blood cell, some of those proteins are going to go on and become brand new viruses that are going to explode out of the cell and go infect other cells. Here's my point. Viruses are tricky little stinkers, okay? They basically trick these cells, their host cells, into believing they belong there. They take their genetic material, which is going to end up making bad proteins. They sneak it into the host cell DNA without them even knowing it, realizing it. And now this white blood cell is going to manufacture all these proteins, both good and bad, but unfortunately some of those proteins are going to destroy the white blood cell. Death to the white blood cell and to the gazillion other ones that these viruses are going to attack. Yeah. Everybody get that? It's kind of interesting. They're trying to come up with medications and treatments to stop this process, but it's hard. And I'll get to that in a minute. But there are drugs, there are treatments out there that are maybe trying to stop the virus from even coming into the cell. There's other drugs that are trying to stop the process of this RNA becoming DNA. You get the idea. They're trying to make all these drugs that you hear about that are trying to treat HIV are trying to stop this process. Here's the problem, though. They're not having very good luck because of this one other quality about viruses. Viruses evolve. Remember, that's just the fancy word for change rapidly. Let's think about that. Even if they create a drug that is going to stop a certain part of this process, these little suckers are changing so often that a drug that might have worked a week ago doesn't work today. That's the bad thing about viruses evolving so quickly. Okay. By the way, just to kind of generalize, I want you guys to kind of understand the difference between HIV and AIDS. I've been talking about HIV a lot here, and those are those little particles I'm talking about. So HIV actually stands for the virus. So somebody can have HIV, and the only thing that means is that literally the virus particles are inside of them. Okay. There's people who spend a whole lifetime with the virus inside of them and are still doing okay. Magic Johnson's one of them. He's basically had HIV for like 20 years or something insane. Nobody really quite knows why they're working on that. They have their thing. He's not the only one. There's actually plenty of people who had the HIV virus that are, you can't even tell. Huh?
Did he get like suspended or something for that? Or did he just...
He probably just resigned, I assume, because of, I don't know. That was so long ago. Now he's like an old man, I believe.
And then he came back on June 10th.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, AIDS, though. AIDS is different. This is basically a complete failure of the immune system. Okay. What happens, think about it this way. This virus is going to be in your body. And this virus is going to start attacking your white blood cells. Well, if you don't have any more white blood cells, you're going to be in a whole lot of trouble when you get the common cold or pneumonia or something that most normal people can totally get rid of easily. People with HIV, I see you, Jerry. People with HIV can spend a lifetime having the virus inside of them, but for whatever reason, their body, their immune cells, aren't attacked as much. Okay, so it's AIDS is actually when your body's immune system is so low that even things like the common cold usually are the things that kill you. Jerry, did you have a question?
Yeah, but aren't they basically like the same thing? Because HIV is like human immunodeficiency, or immune, some kind of
Human immunodeficiency.
virus.
Yep.
So it's like the same exact thing as that, the failure of the immune system.
It's not. Having the virus doesn't mean you actually have AIDS, believe it or not. You only have AIDS when your body is so, your immune system's so repressed that you actually start showing the signs of sickness. Does that make sense then? Okay, that's probably a better way of putting it. That's a really good question. So Magic Johnson, I don't think he even has AIDS. I'm pretty sure. There's a lot of people who spend a lifetime having HIV, but they don't end up getting AIDS. They're trying to figure out why. They would love to bottle it up and sell it at the market, believe me. They think, let me just kind of tell you what they think. They think that Magic Johnson and people like him are making some protein that most normal people aren't. You know, everybody's DNA is just a little bit different. If their DNA is just a little bit different, they're going to be making slightly different proteins they think that Magic Johnson's actually one of those people who's making something that most normal people don't, and whatever proteins he's making is somehow keeping them alive. Pretty cool?
Yep.
Oh. Okay, I want to show you a video of HIV attacking a white blood cell.
So, is it
Yeah.
interesting or is it?
Oh, one more word I forgot to give you guys. It's really basic. It's one of your vocab words, but it's easy compared to this stuff.
Probably didn't even get it down.
That is a virus, though.
That's 2 more. What?
You said herpes?
Yeah.
Correct. There are some viruses that actually, once you, that can, like the common cold, once you have it, you're done. There's other viruses that never go away from inside your body. That's herpes is one of them. Cold sores. Okay. Basically, those are the viruses that it gets a little technical, and I won't go into it, but yeah. Hey, the word pathogen. I don't care if you know about the word prion. The word pathogen is the one I want you to be familiar with. A pathogen is a very generic word. It's basically anything that's going to cause a disease. A virus, if it ends up causing a disease, is a pathogen. A bacteria that ends up causing a disease is a pathogen. Actually, there are certain proteins out there that actually cause disease. Mad cow disease is actually caused, that's kind of a fun fact, but mad cow disease is actually, it's not caused by a virus or a bacteria. It's caused by a protein, like a weird-shaped protein inside cows that attacks brain cells. It's really weird.
Does it make them mad?
It makes their brain cells basically deteriorate, so they end up going into convulsions and doing weird cow things.
Interesting.
And I think they give us that. Ooh, I'm kind of talking too much today.
That's all right. What?
It's okay.
I need another day.
You like hearing me talk,
I
don't
do.
you?
I like hearing your voice.
Zane?
That's what it is.
You like what?
I like hearing your voice.
Oh, you're such a sucker. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple things. I'm going to show you the little movie clip in a minute. But, oops. I want to show you this too. The only point of this thing that I'm showing now, let's just kind of focus here. I want you guys to get an idea of how tiny viruses are. They're tiny. I want you to kind of understand the difference between a virus, a bacteria, which is a little bit bigger, and like a typical cell that you would find in your body. Cells are huge compared to these things. Okay, here's what's going to happen. It's basically going in. The first thing you're going to see, the things you're going to see are all listed here in order. So the first thing you're going to see is a human hair. You can see that. Then you're going to see this little dust mite. Okay. And pretty soon you'll see this yellow thing. That's a ragweed pollen. Then that purple thing is a white blood cell called a lymphocyte. It's a fancy word. It's a white blood cell. That's a typical cell. The red thing's a red blood cell. So those are the things found in your blood. Those are the purple thing and the red thing are typical cells. This thing right here is a yeast cell. It's a little different. And then we start getting to the bacteria and viruses. Okay, the green thing here and the yellow thing here are you can get an idea of how, those are bacteria. So you can get an idea of how bacteria, how much smaller bacteria are in comparison to regular cells in your body. Then you have to go even closer to see viruses. Viruses are tiny. They are dinky little suckers. Look at these things. There's just 2 different viruses. By the way, this is an animation. These aren't real pictures of viruses, just to do that. Yeah. But look how small they are. Just in relation to bacteria and in relation to cells, kind of gives you an idea. It goes viruses, bacteria, cells. Okay. I want to show you this. This is actually kind of a neat video. I'm so glad we have YouTube.
We can't
upload on your site.
Oh, that's fine. I'm all good.
Does that mean we can go to YouTube?
Okay.
You cannot.
No, you cannot. Only us.
That's bullcrap.
Hey, this is actually.
Whoops.
This is actually an animation of, that's an HIV. This is animation, so this isn't real stuff, but they have an animation showing how a virus is going to attack a white blood cell. I'm going to narrate it myself. I think it's actually kind of neat. Oops. Okay, there's a virus. That's an HIV particle.
Which one?
This thing right here. Don't ignore that other stuff around it. Okay. That virus is going to approach a white blood cell, which is represented by purple. White blood cells are typically not purple. They just made it pretty for the movie. Look how much bigger the white blood cells are compared to the viruses. These viruses, okay, it gets a little technical here, but these are basically little receptors on the surface of cells. Here's what's going to happen. Try to ignore the detail, but this virus up here, the red thing, is going to dock itself on top of the white blood cell, and it has its own little kind of receptor proteins. Normally, your white blood cell would be able to be like, no, don't enter, but for whatever reason, this virus is tricking this cell into believing it belongs there. And these receptors are all hooking up, and it gets complicated with, you know, all these things. But anyway, all I want you to see from this is that the virus and the white blood cell are hooking up. That virus just tricked that white blood cell into believing it belongs inside of there. So that's exactly what's happening now. That basically the contents of the virus are being drawn into the white blood cell. These pesky viruses. Okay. What's going to happen next? The contents of that virus just dumped inside the cell. Remember, HIV, this is RNA. That red thing that looked like licorice is RNA. They talk about some other proteins. Don't worry about it. But what's going to happen next is that thing that was red, which was the RNA. You're going to see in this video, it's going to kind of transform itself into DNA. That's why it's a retrovirus. It's going to change back into DNA. And it takes, that's what's going on right now. That red molecule is kind of changing. It goes through a couple series of changes before it's all done. It gets a little complicated. But now it's kind of becoming DNA here pretty quick. There's the DNA. That is viral bad DNA. Okay, it just did that. Now what's going to happen, they show it's going to get a little fine-tuned. They're cutting off some ends to make them sticky because this DNA, now that it's sticky, is going to literally cut and paste itself into the white blood cell's DNA. Literally, it's invading the DNA. It's just kind of cut and pasting itself in. That's bad. This poor DNA doesn't even realize it has invader DNA. But what's going to end up happening, and it gets a little technical, that DNA is going to now go on to make all these bad proteins, well, both good and bad proteins, but it's going to be making bad proteins so it can make all new viruses all over again. Those purple things are all new proteins that are now being made. And then they talk about some other things. But if anything, somebody in the other class, because it gets technical, they're like, wow, all that stuff goes on inside of our cells. It's amazing the detail that goes on inside every little cell in your body. Hopefully not this, type of detail, but then all these new viruses are being made. And that's a new virus. Bam. Now you gotta understand though, there are thousands of these things are being made every minute. All right, I'm gonna stop because I'm kind of out of time, and I want you guys to at least get in your groups for a little bit. Any questions on this stuff? Real quick. Okay, here's what I want you to do for the last 10 minutes of class. Get in your groups. Decide what your independent variable is going to be. Everybody has the same dependent variable. We're all coming up with an experiment to test the decomposition rate in leaves. You guys need to be coming up with an independent variable, and you can start your experiment today. A lot of other people have. Be sure to label everything with your name. You have some cups, styrofoam cups back there you can use. You have dirt outside in the courtyard. You have leaves all over the place. Actually, in the front desk by Miss Sin, there are some leaves you can use. set me up a good experiment, like we were talking about the other day.